to taste a sip of the demon lord's strawberry-flavored bathwater. A secretly enamored kitten sneaks to the rooftop to spy on the demon lord bathing. Unexpectedly, it loses its footing and falls into the bath, thinking it would drown. Suddenly, its little paw touches a pillar. 9 feels a surge of joy and clings to it without a second thought. But the demon lord's face suddenly stiffens. 9 is unaware of what it is holding onto. Suddenly, a large hand reaches into the water and grabs its neck. At this moment, Chongyin's face can no longer be described as merely terrifying. He intended to kill this audacious kitten immediately, but surprisingly, the kitten gave him a sense of familiarity, though that person had been dead for hundreds of years. Little did Chongyin know, he was not mistaken. Now residing in the kitten's body was the former demon lord, Z9, the mighty demon lord reborn into a small kitten. Displeased that his position had been usurped by another, he intended to launch a sneak attack to deliver a fatal blow. But unexpectedly, the opening scene occurred. At this moment, Chongyin lost all interest in bathing. He threw the dripping kitten out. 9 didn't expect Chongyin to be so ruthless. The impact almost shattered his internal organs. Chongyin, without the slightest regard for the nearby 9, cleanly and efficiently picked up his clothes and dressed his strong, perfect body. At this moment, 9 lay on the ground, barely alive. Seeing this, he disdainfully meowed. This person is so pretentious, as if trying to seduce someone. At this moment, a maid's panicked voice sounded from outside the door. Your Excellency, a white cat has entered your residence. I don't know if it has disturbed you. Upon hearing this, Chongyin's sharp gaze fell on the little cat on the ground. Then he coldly said, "Come in and take it out." Hearing the demon lord's indifferent tone, Dao, she trembled all over. This is certainly going to incur the lord's punishment. Your Excellency, this unruly kitten, I will handle it properly. Chongyin glanced at the kitten and raised an eyebrow. How do you plan to handle it? First pluck its fur, then skin it, and feed it to the wild dogs. Dao, she looked at Chongyin with hopeful eyes. Chongyin did not immediately respond. He walked straight to the main hall and lazily leaned back. His black hair loosely tied, long legs curled up, his cold feet stepping on the bed, faintly visible under the hem of his red robe. Though she had seen the Lord for hundreds of years, Dao, she was still stunned by his beauty. Your method is insufficient. Chongyin's fingers tapped rhythmically on the tea table. The dull thumping sound resonated deeply, making hearts tremble. Dao, she lowered her eyes and asked, "Then what does your Excellency intend?" Chongyin curled his lips, his phoenix eyes narrowing slightly. Besides plucking and skinning, why not cut a piece of flesh from it each day, making it wish for death? Dao, she swallowed hard in fright and quickly nodded. Nearby, Nyan, held in the maid's arms, heard this and opened its little mouth and let out a protesting meow, muttering curses at Chongyin, but only producing childish meowing sounds, which no one could understand. Chongyin looked at the little cat with interest. Such a young spirit beast cub shouldn't understand human language. But this cat seemed to understand and was protesting. Chongyin suddenly found it amusing. He was about to say a few more words to tease the kitten, when he looked into the kitten's angry black eyes, and felt a tremor in his heart. An overwhelming sense of familiarity washed over him. How could your eyes be so similar to someone I knew? He got off the bed and walked towards the kitten. Seeing Chongyin approach, felt no fear. Instead, it fiercely climbed out of the maid's hands. As Chongyin got closer, it pounced on Chongyin's face. Ungrateful wretch, heartless beast. 9 slapped Chongyin's handsome face with a paw, continuously cursing him. The maids around were stunned, not daring to breathe. The entire hall was filled with extreme tension. Chongyin's face turned as black as the bottom of a pot. He grabbed the kitten by the scruff of its neck and pulled it off his face. His phoenix eyes darkened, Then he surprisingly laughed in anger. Well now, not only the eyes, even the personality is alike. You are quite an interesting cat. Changyin took a deep breath and tossed the cat back to Daoshi. Go clean it up and bring it to my room. I will personally punish it. Daoshi and the surrounding maids were all stunned. Surprised, they looked up at Changyin, momentarily thinking they had misheard. It was the first time seeing the demon lord change his orders. However, to them, this little kitten would only suffer more in Changyin's hands. Everyone sighed in their hearts, and then obeyed the order, taking the kitten away. When Daoshi prepared a basin of water to bathe him, as soon as 99 saw the water, he fluffed up completely. He flailed his short legs, trying to escape. Daoshi tightly grabbed the kitten's legs and anxiously said, "Don't move, you're so dirty. The Lord hates filth the most. If you don't want to die more miserably, then clean yourself properly." Bai Z9 couldn't care less about Changyin's preferences. He was terribly afraid of water. After being reborn into this kitten's body, he didn't want to touch water at all. Getting his fur wet was extremely uncomfortable. The little cat struggled like an eel. In a moment of inattention from Daoshi, 99 slipped out of her hands. Daoshi was startled and looked up to find him, only to discover the kitten had disappeared. At the same time, Z9 was already running towards Changyin's room. 200 years ago, that was his sleeping quarters as well. Z9 was very familiar with the place. Originally a white little furball, he deliberately rolled in the mud outside, turning into a dirty little mud ball. Only then did he contentedly head to Changyin's room. Since Changyin liked cleanliness so much, he deliberately wouldn't let Changyin have his way. Whether in the past or now, 99 always felt satisfied only when opposing Changyin. 99 sneaked into the room. At this moment, Changyin was resting his head on one hand, draped in a red robe, half lying on the couch. His cold, handsome face with phoenix eyes was already closed. No maids were tending inside. 99 entered the room and walked towards Changyin, covered in mud, strutting with his little head held high, leaving a trail of muddy paw prints behind. The little mud ball tried to leap onto the couch, but having been exhausted for so long today, and having not eaten for a long time, he was already worn out. He failed to jump up. With a plop, he fell back to the ground and rolled over twice. 99 felt embarrassed. His face flushed with heat, furiously scratching the floor. Unwilling to give up, he took a few steps back, gathered his strength, and charged again. This time, he was midair, about to make it onto the couch, when a large hand suddenly appeared, grabbing 99 by the scruff. 99's heart sank. He kicked his legs a few times in struggle, but it was all in vain. Changyin, with a darkened face, held the kitten up, seeing him covered in mud. A wave of anger surged in his heart. "You troublesome cat! What exactly are you trying to do?" Changyin disdainfully threw the cat onto the carpet. Looking at the mud on his hand, his brows furrowed tightly. Though 99 had been thrown again, but seeing Changyin unhappy made him happy. 99's round eyes sparkled brightly. Changyin looked up and met 99's eyes filled with amusement. He paused for a moment, then laughed. "You dared to mock me." 99 was stunned by Changyin's words, feeling a bit surprised. Could it be that Changyin could tell he was laughing at him? Even though he was now just a kitten, Changyin looked curiously at the kitten's dumbfounded expression. Narrowing his eyes, he murmured, "Are you really an ordinary spirit beast? Such a small spirit beast usually hasn't even developed intelligence. How could it do such bewildering things like this?" Changyin stared at the kitten's lively, spinning eyes, and after a while, he called out, "Someone come, prepare water." When Daoshi brought the maids in to serve, she immediately saw the muddy kitten lying on the ground. She stumbled and almost fell. She looked in horror at the kitten and then at Changyin, her voice trembling. Your Excellency, it's my fault for not doing my job well. Zhang Yin gave her a cold glance and said, "Go receive your punishment later." Dao Shi nodded in fear. Yes, the maids placed the basin on the washstand and took a towel to approach Chang Yin to wash his hands. But Chang Yin waved them away. He then walked a few steps to the kitten on the ground and picked the kitten up from the floor. Nyan shook his body in defiance. "Little kitten, I see you are very afraid of water." Chang Yin's lips curled up slightly, revealing a half-smile. Nyan's heart skipped a beat. He was very familiar with this expression of Chang Yin's. Whenever he showed this expression, he was about to cause trouble. Sure enough, Chang Yin immediately tossed Nyan into the basin of water. Meow! Nyan let out a miserable cry, thrashing in the water in terror, splashing water everywhere. Damn Chang Yin! One day, when he regained his human form and reclaimed the demon lord's throne, he would definitely throw Chang Yin into the sea to feed the fish. Nyan cursed under his breath, while frantically flailing his short legs, struggling to the edge of the basin, clinging to the edge to avoid sinking back into the water. At this moment, Nyan was soaking wet. He instinctively shook his fur vigorously, trying to shake off all the water. Then he looked up at Chang Yin and froze. The once dignified demon lord now had water dripping down his handsome face. Even the front of his robe was soaked. Nyan poked his furry little head out of the basin, staring at Chang Yin with wide, innocent eyes, looking completely harmless. Chang Yin's forehead veins bulged, his eyes dark with fury. Nyan felt a sense of schadenfreude. He shook his body again, hoping to splash more water onto Chang Yin. But this time, Chang Yin quickly pressed him down and shoved him back into the water. Nyan's eyes widened. In disbelief, he looked at Chang Yin. This person was too much. The next moment, Nyan howled and bit down hard on Chang Yin's finger. The smile that had just appeared on Chang Yin's lips froze and was immediately replaced by an icy expression. His deep phoenix eyes darkened. He stared at the kitten holding his finger in its mouth, without moving for a long time. Everyone around was too scared to breathe, staring in horror at the scene. Such a young kitten, with teeth not fully grown, even biting Chang Yin with all its might, only felt like a tickle to him. However, Chang Yin always hated being close to any creature. This cat was too bold. Chang Yin pulled his finger from the kitten's mouth, looking at the sticky saliva on it. His eyes darkened and a murderous aura surged around him. Dao Shi, seeing this, turned pale. "How dare you!" She stretched out her hand wrapped in spiritual energy, intending to kill the cat on the spot, hoping to gain the Lord's favor and lighten her own punishment. But just as her hand reached out, Chang Yin waved his hand. A gust of wind imbued with spiritual energy instantly knocked Dao Shi to the ground. Dao Shi lay on the ground in disbelief. Chang Yin didn't spare her a glance. The murderous intent in his eyes flickered briefly and was replaced by a playful smile. "Little kitten, do you know who I am?" Chang Yin looked at the kitten with a sinister smile. Nyan raised his head and let out a series of meows. Just a defeated subordinate. If it weren't for his death, how could the demon lord's position fall to Chang Yin? Chang Yin suddenly chuckled shortly. "Not bad. How about I give you a name?" Hearing this, Nyan shook his head vigorously. He didn't care for a name from Chang Yin. He was the dignified demon lord. He didn't need it. But Chang Yin ignored the kitten's resistance. Gently pinching Nyan's soft ears, he said slowly, "Let's call you Little Rice Cake. How about that?" Nyan raised a paw and slapped Chang Yin's hand away. His fur bristled as he bared his teeth. He didn't want such an awful name. It didn't show his might at all. Chang Yin, however, paid no heed to Nyan's feelings. After bestowing the name, he left it at that, and then strode out of the hall. Nyan was washed clean of mud, picked up by a maid and dried with spiritual energy. Then the maid found a cage and locked Nyan inside. Nyan meowed in protest. But he was too hungry and weak. He could only watch helplessly as the cage door was locked. After Changyin left, no one else entered the hall. Nyan, dizzy with hunger, lay in the cage, barely alive. When Changyin returned, it was already evening. A man in black followed him. Changyin leisurely took a seat on the couch. The man in black lowered his head and said, "Your Excellency, the major sects are jointly hosting the Qing Trials and have invited you to attend. The Qing Trials is a martial arts tournament for young disciples of various sects. In this world where the strong are revered, if one could achieve a good rank in the Qing Trials, their status will rise significantly. Along with it comes access to superior cultivation resources and the favor and competition of various powers. The former demon lord, Nyan, and the current Changyin, both were once champions of the Qing Trials." Changyin raised an eyebrow and slowly said, "Oh," then asked, "Will Liu Yun be attending? The Changsheng sect is sending people to watch. Among them is immortal Lord Liu Yun." Changyin smiled with satisfaction. "Then I must go meet this old friend." As they mentioned immortal Lord Liu Yun, in the corner, Nyan, lying listlessly in the cage, perked up his ears. His drooping tail also wagged a bit. Immortal Lord Liu Yun was Nyan's only friend among those so-called righteous sects. He was also the man Nyan had admired for a long time. But unfortunately, immortal Lord Liu Yun was devoted to the Tao and had no emotions. After several setbacks, Nyan gave up on his feelings for Liu Yun. However, he was still his only friend. So hearing Liu Yun's name now, Nyan couldn't help but feel a slight stir. If asked why Nyan liked immortal Lord Liu Yun, first and foremost, it was because immortal Lord Liu Yun was good-looking. In the entire cultivation world, in terms of looks, immortal Lord Liu Yun was considered the most handsome. Of course, except for the demon Changyin. Moreover, immortal Lord Liu Yun was attentive and gentle, unlike Changyin, who only opposed him. While Nyan was lost in thought, the man in black had already left the hall. Changyin sipped his tea for a while. After a moment, he thought of getting up to leave. In the corner, Nyan, with his belly flattened by hunger, scrambled to cling to the cage, pitifully meowing at Changyin. "Meow, meow!" Changyin feigned a surprised look, turning his head towards Nyan in the cage. "How did you get here?" Changyin's voice was always cold and monotone, but Nyan still detected a hint of schadenfreude. However, Nyan was too hungry at the moment. He suppressed his irritable temper. He put his two short front paws together and bowed to Changyin, meowing softly with a kitten's voice. But no matter how much Changyin couldn't understand what he was saying. Besides, he hadn't eaten for hundreds of years, having long forgotten about the need to eat. For a moment, he didn't realize that the little cat needed food. At that moment, Changyin only found the previously mischievous kittens begging amusing. Nyan, seeing that Changyin couldn't understand his plea, angrily circled the cage. The little Lord Cat suppressed his irritable temper. He reached out a paw and tapped the lock on the cage. Changyin raised an eyebrow. "You want to come out?" Nyan eagerly nodded his little head and made a gesture with his paws as if praying. Changyin chuckled. Gathering spiritual energy at his fingertips, he flicked it towards the lock. With a click, the lock opened. Nyan circled around Changyin's feet, making pleasing, soft sounds. Changyin snorted. "You're obedient now." Nyan anxiously reached out a paw to tug at Changyin's robe. Changyin glanced down at the little cat, feeling a bit impatient. He took 2 steps back. Looking down at the kitten, his voice turned slightly cold. "I have no time to play with you." Hearing this, Nyan was completely speechless, wasn't it? In the past, he had never seen Changyin being so clueless. The little Lord Cat was furious. His claws flashed out, Glaring at Chong Yin with a fierce light in his eyes, Chong Yin raised an eyebrow. Not wanting to deal with the troublesome kitten any longer, he turned on his heel and walked away. But after just a few steps, he suddenly felt a weight on his back. Chong Yin turned to see Nine hanging onto his robe, his little paws gripping the fabric tightly, almost tearing it apart. Chong Yin's brow twitched at the sight. What exactly do you want, you foolish cat? Nine clung to Chong Yin, raising his furry little head, his bright eyes sparkling. With a pitiful yet urgent look, Nine stared at Chong Yin. But Chong Yin just couldn't figure out what Nine wanted. He spun around a few times, but couldn't shake off the cat. Chong Yin took a deep breath. Finally, impatiently, he grabbed Nine and pulled him off, dangling him in front of his face, then squinted his phoenix eyes and threw Nine to the ground. I said, if you want to live, don't bother me. Nine was ruthlessly thrown to the ground, crying out in pain with a series of meows. Nine was simply too hungry. He struggled a bit to get up, but found himself too weak. So he lay on the ground, pretending to be dead. Chong Yin watched Nine for a moment before turning to leave. But just as he was about to step over the threshold, a faint, pitiful meow sounded from behind. It was truly heartbreaking. Chong Yin paused and clicked his tongue. Finally, he waved a hand to summon a maid, instructing her to call for a spiritual healer to check on the kitten. Night fell. The main hall was brightly lit. Chong Yin sat on the couch, expressionless as he watched the healer examine the kitten. The healer, sweating under the demon lord's gaze, let out a deep breath once the examination was over, reporting respectfully, Your Excellency, the kitten is not seriously harmed, just hasn't eaten for a long time. It needs food immediately, otherwise its life will be in danger. It will be critical if delayed any further. Chong Yin raised an eyebrow, a hint of surprise flashing in his eyes. Then he coughed lightly and waved his hand. All right, you may leave. The healer nodded slightly, wiping the sweat from his forehead as he hurried to leave. Suddenly, he remembered something and turned back to remind. By the way, Your Excellency, this kitten is very young. It now needs easily digestible food, like milk, fish soup, etc. After the healer left, Chong Yin's thoughtful gaze fell on the weakly lying Nine on the carpet. Knowing that Nine was this hungry, Chong Yin thought back to Nine's earlier actions. It seemed he had missed the signs of the kitten's hunger. It turned out he had misjudged, not realizing the little cat was starving. But as the demon lord, he would never admit his mistake. Soon, several bowls of fish soup were brought in. However, the cooks, holding the trays, hesitated, looking at the small kitten on the floor. Should they place the bowls on the ground for the cat? Or put them on the table for the cat? While the cooks were hesitating, Nine reached out a paw and hugged Chong Yin's leg, wiggling his little butt and wagging his tail. Hurry up and lift him to the table to eat. At this moment, Nine was getting anxious. If he weren't still a kitten, unable to speak and so small, he would have jumped up to eat himself. Chong Yin was slightly stunned. After hesitating for a moment, he bent down and picked up the little kitten. The cooks beside him looked as if they had seen something terrifying. Their eyes widened in shock. Chong Yin glanced at them and said calmly, "Place the food on the table." The cooks came to their senses and quickly nodded. They then placed several plates of fish on the dining table. As they left, the group of cooks was still somewhat dazed. The lofty demon lord actually let a cat eat at the table. At this moment, Nine was anxiously trying to climb out of Chong Yin's arms to get to the food. His little belly had already flattened. If he didn't eat soon, he would starve. But Chong Yin wouldn't let him go just yet. Little rice cake, you were so disrespectful to me today, and you still want to eat my food. Shouldn't you show some gratitude? Nine pretended not to understand, tilting his furry little head, his big eyes full of confusion. Chong Yin's mouth twitched. He tapped the kitten's head with his finger. "You really know how to act, don't you?" Changyin still refused to let go. 99 was so anxious, he didn't know what to do. The smell of the food on the table wafted into his sensitive nose, making him swallow his saliva. In his desperation, 99 suddenly grabbed Changyin's slender, beautiful fingers and stuck out his little pink tongue, licking Changyin's fingers. Changyin's whole body stiffened, his pupils contracted slightly. "You little cat!" 99 was licking the very finger he had bitten earlier. It seemed the cat was trying to apologize. But what Changyin wanted was for the cat to tell him how it could be so intelligent and understand human emotions. Changyin disliked being close to any creature. He withdrew his finger from 99's mouth with a dark expression, enduring his discomfort, then took a cloth and carefully wiped the wet saliva off his finger. The next moment, he commanded in an icy tone, "Stupid cat, don't ever touch me with your mouth again, or I'll throw you to the tigers in the beast park." 99 let out a displeased meow, as if agreeing. Who wants to use their mouth to touch him anyway? 99 huffed disdainfully in his heart. This time, Changyin finally mercifully placed 99 on the table. Excited, he rushed towards a plate of fish. But in his haste, he couldn't stop and plunged headfirst into the food. Changyin, watching from the side, couldn't help but twitch his lips. Holding back, he decided not to scold the little kitten, making a mess while eating. After 99 finished eating, Changyin put him back in the cage. But this time, he didn't lock the cage, meaning 99 could still move around freely. Naturally, 99 couldn't stay in the cage. Seeing Changyin leave, he climbed out. He had eaten so much. His belly was now round, walking with a waddle. 99, once the demon lord, used to luxury, couldn't stand living in a cage, so he waddled towards the inner room. Inside, Changyin was bathing again, under the warm yellow candlelight. Through the screen, faintly revealing the man's perfect figure. Who knows how many times a day this person bathes? 99 yawned. Not interested in Changyin's bathing, he headed straight for the big bed. So when Changyin finished bathing and came out, lifting the quilt, he saw a small kitten curled up inside. The little cat was snoring softly, its round body rising and falling with each breath, looking adorably silly. Changyin watched for a moment, then frowned. He reached out and grabbed the kitten. Then without hesitation, threw the kitten off the bed. "This is my bed, not a place for a dirty cat like you." 99 woke up from the fall. Dazed, he lay on the ground, grumbling with a few meows. Then, as if annoyed by the noise, he used his short front paws to cover his head, curling into a round white ball, and fell asleep right there on the floor. Changyin pursed his lips in displeasure. After a while, adhering to the principle of out of sight, out of mind, he climbed into bed and ignored the kitten. The next morning, when Changyin woke up, he felt something furry on his face, making it hard for him to breathe. With a wave of his hand, Changyin grabbed the fur and threw the bundle aside. He got up, coldly eyeing the dazed kitten he had thrown to the floor. The kitten gradually climbed up. With a voice tinged with anger, Changyin said, "Stupid cat!" After scolding, he called someone to throw 99 out of the hall. It wasn't until the cold wind blew that 99 fully woke up. His body was still weak and young. Yesterday had taken a lot of his energy. One night's sleep wasn't enough for him. But now, 99's stomach was growling again. He glanced at the main hall and sighed dejectedly. These people had forgotten again that he needed to eat. Cultivators who reach a certain level often practice fasting. Everyone in this demon palace had high cultivation. Almost none of them ate regularly, so they didn't remember the little kitten needed to eat regularly. Thus, 99 was finding it difficult to get food, but he decided to fend for himself. He planned to try his luck in the kitchen. Before his rebirth, although he also practiced fasting, he still loved various delicacies. The Demon Palace kitchen was always stocked with food. He wondered how it was now. When 99 sneaked into the kitchen, he found it nearly empty. The stove was cold and the place looked shabby. 99 pouted, unable to help but silently cursed Changyin for not knowing how to enjoy life. The once well-stocked kitchen had turned into this desolate state under his watch. There were only a few people in the kitchen, chatting. 99 pricked up his ears to listen, and found they were talking about him. I heard a new cat in the Beast Park upset the Lord yesterday. That cat must have been beaten to death by now, right? It was supposed to be killed. But the Lord changed his mind and kept it for some reason. Even asked the kitchen to prepare food for the cat. Our kitchen is barely used as it is. How did it come to cooking for a cat? Well, this cat just amused the Lord for a moment. Once the novelty wears off, the Lord will still throw it out. Look, that seems to be the cat on the stove. Someone suddenly noticed 99. Everyone turned their gaze to the little furball licking its paw and eavesdropping. 99 awkwardly put down his paw, but quickly regained his composure, lifting his head proudly, his tail swaying lazily behind him. Like a little feline aristocrat, the people in the small kitchen were somewhat displeased. Because their kitchen was not highly valued, they were seen as the lowest, most useless staff in the Demon Palace. Now a cat was placed above them. Their frustration and resentment erupted. A cook in his 30s or 40s stood up from his small stool, looking at the small white kitten on the stove, with a trace of disdain flashing across his face. A spirit beast with no spiritual power. No wonder the Lord threw this cat out. Little cat, you came to our kitchen because you're hungry, right? The cook raised an eyebrow and asked. 99 let out a soft meow and licked his pink paw again. The cook, seeing this, guessed he was hungry, so he turned around and fetched a small dried fish. The other cooks were dissatisfied and looked at the cook in confusion. The cook winked at them, signaling them to relax. He brought the dried fish to the kitten. 99 took it in his mouth and wagged his tail as he slipped out the window. 99 stumbled and fell when he jumped out the window, rolling twice on the ground in a flurry of dust. Fortunately, no one saw him. He got up, shook off the dust, and walked away nonchalantly. At this point, 9 was starving. He hurried back to the main hall with the dried fish and eagerly started eating. When Changyin returned to the hall, he suddenly realized he hadn't seen the troublesome cat all morning and felt puzzled. Then he noticed a furry ball by the door, twitching slightly. Changyin stopped in his tracks, then walked towards the little kitten in the corner. When Changyin reached him, 99 remained curled up without any reaction. Yesterday, this cat was lively and fierce towards him. Why did it look almost dead today? Changyin clicked his tongue and slightly lifted his foot to nudge the kitten's butt, but 99 still didn't respond. Changyin's eyes darkened. He picked up the kitten. When 99 saw Changyin in his vision, his big, dark eyes filled with tears, looking a bit aggrieved. 9 now a feeble meow. His body continued to twitch. Seeing this, Changyin's brows furrowed. His aura instantly turned icy. He was truly angry. Changyin's eyebrows knitted as his aura grew colder. He looked up at the maidservants, his phoenix eyes narrowing. Who was in charge of this cat? Holding the kitten, Dao Shi and the other attendants fell to their knees in terror. Dao Shi's voice trembled. Your Excellency, no one has been taking care of little rice cake. We don't know what happened to him. Changyin's face darkened as he stared at Dao Shi and the feeble kitten in his hands. The hall fell silent, so quiet you could hear a pin drop. In the eerie silence that made cold sweat break out, 9 suddenly stirred, letting out a soft, weak meow. Then 9 slowly crawled towards the gloomy-faced Changyin. He extended his short paw, grabbing onto Changyin's robe. Then inch by inch, he struggled to climb onto Changyin. Everyone held their breath. After all, the demon lord was still furious. Yet the cat didn't notice and kept climbing onto him. Dao Shi quickly reached out to pull the kitten back, but a long, beautiful hand reached out first, ahead of Dao Shi, scooping the tiny 9 into his palm. Chang Yin, ignoring everyone, held the kitten and sat down. Then he said in a deep voice, "Call the healer." Dao Shi nodded, a bit slow to react. Dao Shi quickly stood up to find the healer. At this moment, Chang Yin looked at the pitiful 9 nestled in his arms, and couldn't bring himself to put him down. So he kept holding him. 9's pink little paws clung to Chang Yin's robe. His furry little head rubbed against Chang Yin's clothes, letting out uncomfortable whimpers, which would soften anyone's heart. The attendants began to understand the Demon Lord's unusual behavior. The Demon Lord always hated any creature getting close to him, but when faced with something so adorable, even the Demon Lord might be unable to resist. However, just as everyone was relieved that the kitten had escaped danger, 9 suddenly vomited a pile of food onto the Demon Lord's clothes. The atmosphere in the hall instantly dropped to freezing point. Everyone's pupils constricted in tense fear. The Demon Lord exuded a terrifying, violent aura. A faint red gleam flickered in his eyes, clearly on the brink of losing control. 9, sensing the danger in Chang Yin's arms, after vomiting, pawed at the mess, as if trying to bury it like he would his waist, attempting to hide what he had expelled. But he had vomited on the Demon Lord's clothes, not on dirt or sand. After a few fake attempts to cover it up, 9 actions were in vain. He shakily crawled away. Chang Yin was sitting at the table. 9 climbed along Chang Yin's hand to hide under the table, curled up in a small ball, trying to hide. Chang Yin's gaze on 9 was as if looking at a dead object, his hand already gathering powerful spiritual energy. One strike would shatter the little cat into pieces. 9 knew Chang Yin was extremely fastidious, but he really didn't do it on purpose. He realized he had truly violated Chang Yin's taboo this time. With his current cultivation, he couldn't withstand Chang Yin's wrath. 9 scratched his head, thinking, and then had a flash of inspiration. Just as Chang Yin reached out to deal with him, 9 lifted his little paw to stop him, showing his tiny claws, gently scratching Chang Yin's palm. At the same time, he looked up with his innocent, pitiful black eyes at Chang Yin. Chang Yin felt the tickle in his palm. His deep phoenix eyes met 9's round eyes, and he suddenly stopped breathing. His body stiffened, his pupils narrowing to a point. After a moment, Chang Yin closed his eyes and withdrew his hand. Taking a deep breath, he ordered through gritted teeth, "Prepare water for a bath." The attendants were stunned to see the Demon Lord let the little cat go. They were shocked beyond measure, and numbly went to prepare the bath for the Demon Lord. They never would have thought that a cat could hold such importance in the Demon Lord's heart. Even in such a situation, the Demon Lord didn't harm the little cat. They couldn't help but think back a few days ago, when a servant accidentally soiled the Demon Lord's clothing. The Demon Lord severed the servant's arm on the spot. It was a gruesome scene. 9 was also panting, grateful to have survived. Scratching Chang Yin's palm was a trick he used to curry favor with Chang Yin before his rebirth. He and Chang Yin were always at odds, constantly teasing each other. Sometimes he would annoy Chang Yin but still need Chang Yin's help. 9 would then have to swallow his pride and appease him. Knowingly, 9 developed the habit of scratching Chang Yin's palm. When he scratched Chang Yin's palm, Chang Yin wouldn't be angry. When the healer hurriedly entered the hall with Dao Shi, Chang Yin had just finished bathing. He changed his clothes and walked out of the inner room, but his face still looked extremely grim. He sat on the couch with a dark expression, holding a delicate teacup, sipping tea without looking at 9, not sparing the kitten a glance. The anxious healer stepped forward, bowing hastily. "Your Excellency, may I ask where you are feeling unwell?" Suppressing his anger, Chang Yin took a sip of tea, then coldly said, Examine that stupid cat." The healer was stunned, almost thinking he misheard. He instinctively looked around the room and saw a little white kitten lying on the floor. Realizing the demon lord meant the cat, a moment later, the healer finished examining the kitten and set it down. Turning, he bowed and reported, "Your Excellency, this kitten has ingested food containing poison, but the toxin is weak. It appears to be from poisons used to kill mosquitoes and rats."